To order. Unfortunately, Priscilla won't be joining us because she hurt her foot and she's unable to join us tonight. But we wish her a speedy recovery, and I know she'll be watching this or watching the video from her home. So we wish her a quick recovery. So the next thing is approval of minutes of January 16th, January 29th, February 5.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of all three dates.
Okay. I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Next is addition to the agenda. I have three. One is spring oiling quote. Two is beavers in Cream Hill Pond. And three is tax refund. Are there any other additions?
No?
Is there a second to add those?
Yes, I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Next we have communications. Do you have any communications?
I think whatever we've had will be involved in.
There's a lot of things here, yeah. Okay, any public comments? Okay, next we have Cornwall Conservation Trust parcel off Route 4. We welcome Bart Jones, president of the Cornwall Conservation Trust, who wrote us a letter asking us to reconsider our decision not to support the Conservation Trust. Proposal to
Well, to change it from a neutral position.
change it from neutral position. So anyway, Bart has written us a letter, and I had a good meeting with him last week. So Bart, do you want to make a little presentation, or
Yes,
do you want
if
to
I could,
circulate copies of your
questions.
thing?
Just to make it clear on what we're talking about.
Here's a
Before I
copy
start my remarks.
remarks in this. Oh, you got those already?
This is the 104-acre parcel on Furnace Brook off Route 4, owned by Buddy Fletcher. That's so you get an idea of where it is relative to the town, and all this green is forest. So it's right in the middle. This is Weontonock State Forest. And then the blow up of the property, in particular, this is the Coltsfoot Mountains here, Weontonock State Forest. You can see how steep it is here. The Mohawk Trail actually goes right like this. And this is Furnace Brook. There is a broken down bridge across Furnace Brook right here. The pond is quite wet. There is a field here, but also quite wet. So I want to make a few remarks. I'll start by saying I'm Bart Jones. I'm president of the Cornwall Conservation Trust. 35 years ago, my wife Debbie and I bought a house here on top of Swamp to be an outpost for our rambunctious sons who needed a break from New York City and enjoy the outdoors in Cornwall, particularly sledding right behind the house. We moved up here permanently about 10 years ago, and I retired 6 years ago. I love to hike in the Cornwall forest with my old black lab, Jessie. I want to start by thanking the selectmen in the town on behalf of Cornwall Conservation Trust. Your support over the last 5 years has enabled us to conserve 317 acres of Trinity Forest, 85 acres of Cooley Farm Preserve, and 90 acres of Sherrill Cadman Evans Preserve, and your support for our open space grants has brought us $1,430,000 in both federal and state money. That's approximately 80% of what it costs to conserve these properties. We raised another approximately $480,000 from private individuals, including $200,000 from an anonymous donor through HVA's Greenprint Collaborative, who was not even a resident of Cornwall. As recently as last year, you supported our application to conserve 70 acres on Charterville Mountain, currently owned by the Matnam family. Thank you for helping us conserve 5 acres of farmland on the Cooley's property, 447 acres of forest that will support wildlife habitat, be open to the public for enjoyment, protect against effects of climate change, and help maintain the quality of Cornwall streams. I have 3 thoughts to share with you tonight and asking you to reconsider your decision on this particular property. 104 acres owned by Buddy Fletcher along Furnace Brook Road. First, placing this property into conservation will not materially reduce Cornwall's tax base or annual tax revenue. Second, now's the time to conserve this property. And third, the Cornwall Conservation Trust, as you know, is willing to work creatively with the town to find ways to keep Cornwall green and promote economic vitality. I'll just cover these briefly in detail. The first one being placing the 104 acres into conservation and off the Cornwall tax roll will not materially reduce Cornwall's tax base or annual tax revenue. As you know, Cornwall is a town of 46 square miles and has 18,440 acres that are currently taxable by the town, out of a total of 29,440 acres. Fortunately or unfortunately, most of this land is either taxed as forest or farmland under Connecticut Public Act 490. Privately owned forest land qualifying for 490 is assessed by the town at $168 an acre and results in an annual tax revenue of about $3 an acre. Privately owned farmland qualifying for 490 is assessed by the town at $322 an acre and results in an annual tax revenue of about $5 an acre. As you can see from this map, the 104 acres we're seeking to conserve would qualify as either forest or farmland and would have an assessed value for somewhere around $30,000 and an annual tax revenue of not more than $300. So it would not have a material effect on either the tax base or the annual revenue. The second thing is Cornwall Conservation Trust found a willing conservation seller and has submitted an application for an open space grant to pay the seller by the application filing deadline of February 1st. So we've made the application. If we were to wait to act on this property, we could either lose the willing seller or forget getting any possible state grants for the coming year. As you know, getting both the seller and funding together at the same moment for conservation is a little like time and tide. That confluence of conservation and seller and money waits for no one. Third, the Cornwall Conservation Trust wants to work with the town and others to find creative ways to keep Cornwall's unique status among towns by being forested and farmed and economically vibrant. We have mixed-use properties which are conserved both for forest and farming at little or no cost to farmers. While this 104 acres is not suitable for commercial or residential use, it may have viable farmland, and that would be allowed if we are successful in conserving it. We would be willing to ask future donors of property in Cornwall to consider land for both conservation and affordable housing. We would also work with the town and others to find ways to invest in town infrastructure such as a wastewater treatment facility in West Cornwall to allow for more commercial use as well as multi-family housing, thereby reducing pressure to eliminate forest and farmland. So I ask you now to change your vote from nothing against to supports our state grant application for open space in respect to this 104 acres I know that working together, there are ways we can keep Cornwall green and economically viable without becoming just another part of the East Coast suburban sprawl between New York and Boston. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Good, thank you, Bart. Richard, do you have any questions, comments?
Well, the only comment I would have is that I don't think our decision was ever based on our, the tax implications. I think that's fairly well understood that 490 land, I mean, it's a point to make. I'm not saying it's not a point to make, but I don't think I made my decision based on the tax implications. I'm just telling you my own point of view. I can't speak for Gordon or Priscilla when they voted. I'm not saying you're...
I know, but the letter I received said Cornwall has lost most of its state tax revenue, and the town is, and I sympathize with this, that the town has reduced tax revenue from the state, but it ends with the need for preserving the town's tax base and future options for mixed-use land were among the reasons for not supporting.
Well, future possibilities is not the same as tax implications, but...
Well, it says something about the tax rate, but I agree that this is a topic. We're into a new plan of conservation and development. Both of these issues, 490 and how that's affected, and what is enough conservation in Cornwall, perhaps that should be addressed, but not in the context of this little particular property.
Right, and that may well be true. I think it's a conversation that needs to take place, and a resolution or a solution that needs to be obtained, and hopefully it will be in the next town plan.
Right.
And maybe not on this particular property.
Right, I'd like to say that this property is not so big and consequential as to affect whatever might be decided in the future about the plan. It does comply with the last 2010 plan of conservation and development, both as to the values of the town and where it's situated.
Right, and I think our position at this point, or our context, or our place in time is much different than it was 10 years ago when that plan was developed and approved. We found, for the first time, the town is losing year-round population, and certainly we need to give additional emphasis to things that weren't obvious 10 years ago. And I think the town, without trying to be argumentative, we're in charge of running the town, and the town can't run only on open space. We need a tax base, and the state, which owns 20-something% of the town, is now giving us zero for any kind of payment in lieu of taxes. So we do have to get revenue to make the town work, and we need people here. And I think, having said that, I like especially the last point about opportunities to work forward. And I also have to say that we're frustrated as town officials with the state lack of state support for some of our things, and of course the state has its reasons and its own financial problems, and I didn't mean, and maybe I did mix that up somewhat with this application, so I didn't want to make our finance issues pivot around this piece, which and I think we as a board are appreciative of the good work that the trust has done and its preservation efforts and its trail system. It's been a real benefit to the town. And I think, again, our solutions to our problems, has become increasingly clear, are going to have to be homegrown and a result of cooperation between townspeople and town organizations. And I think we need to look at new solutions to some of our are new problems, that some of them are new, some of them aren't, but we have to be creative, and I like what I read in this paper, and I don't want to get all wound up in a major controversy over one piece, other than to note that we have increased responsibilities to make ends meet in the town, and really have a new agenda going forward, is growing the town's population and its tax base and its economy. That being said, I'd be, on the basis of this and our earlier conversations, I'd be willing to reconsider our support of this particular piece. Again, there may be, because which I didn't understand, that you had actually gotten, some agreements, or you were fairly far along with a purchase agreement, and right now, to be honest, there's no economic land trust, there's no there's a housing trust, but it's not in a position to develop extra property at this point, and this property, although it could sustain some residential development, would be expensive and probably wouldn't be the first choice for that. So for all those reasons, I'd be willing to reconsider our stance to supporting your state grant application in the context which I've described, which is different than what we had 10 years ago.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to working together with the town on trying to come up with those solutions to the challenges we face.
Right. Good. I think that's a good spirit to have, and
I think I just think it was, as presumably everybody here is aware, that it's an important dialogue to have, and we're attempting to start the conversation on it, and maybe it sort of got jump-started, and not the best or smoothest way to start it, and as we're saying, this may not be the piece to be starting the conversation on, but it is necessary to have that dialogue, to have that conversation, to have everybody working together toward that end, and I think I would be willing to revisit our vote on the support of it.
okay, so I'll make a motion to support this application. No, we're just going to have our session, and then we'll ask for comments after we're finished our deliberations.
So if that's a motion to, are we re-voting or just taking another vote? How would
we can take another vote to
Okay.
support.
Then I'll second that.
So what's the motion?
To support their grant application for conservation of 104 acres off Route 4 in the context of the letter that we got today at the February 6th meeting. So I'll second that.
No, you made the motion, I
I made
already
a motion.
seconded.
Okay.
I think you made the motion.
Right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any more comments, questions on this particular piece? Yes, Johan?
Yep, Johan Windsor, I am a member of the Cornwall Conservation Trust, and I certainly appreciate that the selectmen would reconsider this proposal and would take another vote on the matter. I would also like to say that I do think the issue related to this particular piece of property came up a bit abruptly. I think within the board there was some internal discussion, surprise, given particularly the selectmen's support in the past. So I would like to encourage a positive, affirmative vote on this particular piece of property, albeit even if it's with no prejudice that we would continue doing that in the future. You could leave that on the table for further reconsideration. I think the board has been duly notified again of the selectmen's concerns, and certainly I believe we will take those under consideration any forward.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
have a question, but where does the Mohawk Trail tie into this?
It comes right down,
It comes off of here somewhere.
comes right past the Cheney's,
Which is probably
down
just a
into
few.
here and up into here. It's right here. It goes right along the top of, comes steeply up and then right along the top of Coltsfoot Mountains.
So it's more over on this.
It hits it right about here, this property. It comes across
I
from,
think their house is right in. No, their house is way over here. I
I think
guess.
this is, yeah, it comes across the brook here and then up onto here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, next we have Cornwall against tobacco. The board has received a package of letters from the Cornwall Against Tobacco Club at CCS asking us to consider no smoking signs on town parks and recreational places.
Well, we don't allow smoking on public property now.
Correct, but they want to put up signs. They're talking, here's a couple letters, quite a few letters. 53,000 people die from secondhand smoke. Ooh. This one says 41,000. Anyway. So the question is, would the town allow them to put up no smoking signs? This is good. Regarding the tons of children involved in this town. So the children believe that signs will help this problem. And of course, these parks are not heavily used right now. If we want to await any decision on this, or they're talking about Footfield, Hubbard Field, Hammond Beach, playground in the village. There is some testimony that they have seen people smoking at these places.
I would like some time to think about that.
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, we don't allow it as it is.
Right.
Along with, I'm not sure how much more signage we need in places. I don't know. Have you seen? I haven't seen anybody smoking in any of these locations. I must admit I haven't been to all of them recently, so I don't know. But
And I think pretty much at Hammond Beach we have lifeguards that aren't putting up with it. So.
there's always somebody on duty there.
Right.
Well,
I
at
think
the
it's in one of the
beaches-
regs. In one of the regulations, you can't smoke at the beach.
I
Right.
think it's the town that is, like, Footfield coming in same thing.
Right.
We used to have signs there
No smoking.
for a long time.
Okay. So anyway, I just let you know there's a new club in town against tobacco, and I'll be meeting with them soon. Okay. So that's the latest. Let me, if you want to read more,
Oh, no, you're welcome.
you want to take the file with you?
That's okay, you can have
Okay.
it, and you can meet with him.
Right. Got it. All right, so, Other news, the big news in town today was the oil tank is in Cornwall Bridge. The big oil tank is being demolished this week.
That was impressive.
So Richard was on the scene. Tell us what happened. This is by the concrete bridge in Cornwall Bridge. Big oil tank.
I didn't realize it could make that much noise.
It's a big drum.
It's a big drum, and it was like, what the, walk outside, that's where it's coming from? Hey, wait a second, I think I used to be able to see the tank there.
Right?
And drove down, and there was a big excavator with a,
Shear.
yeah, and just every time it hit it and the thing shook, it reverberated. You can probably hear it, a mile, half a mile away.
Mm.
It was definitely loud. There was a number of people there looking at it. They were looking for sand. Actually, they came out and asked us if they had anybody locally could sand the area because the excavator was sliding.
Right?
Yeah, so, but it was very quickly rolled over.
Uh-huh.
There is a bottom on it, which is nice to know that it wasn't all just sitting on the ground.
Wasn't sitting in sand.
The oil wasn't sitting on the ground being absorbed in. But
So it's rolled over. It's down. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it there? So they're hauling. They're scrapping the metal.
I assume they're scrapping the metal. I don't know. I think they were just cutting it up today.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the plan is to bring flatbeds in to take it away. I didn't really.
Right.
And whether the oil, if it's contaminated metal or it can be used, I don't know what how that part of it works. But it must be fairly thick. I think it was single wall.
Right.
As opposed to double wall.
Yeah.
From a distance, that appeared to be what it was. Seeing it was probably built in, the 60s?
Yeah.
Its useful life is over.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a 400,000 gallon tank.
Right.
I think that's the number I remember.
A
200,
landmark.
400,000. I don't know. Do they have plans to replace it?
I haven't heard that. So there's some questions as far as what's going on with the site. I believe they're leaving the pumps in place, or some apparatus in place, whether the site will be available or not, or how that all is going to work out. How big the site is. I should get a map of it all.
It probably is that they were removing something whose useful life was over,
Right.
and become obsolete and dangerous to use. And so the first step is to remove it, and maybe the plan is to replace it. Maybe it's not. Maybe they'll put a much smaller tank in, or a modern tank, or
Right.
something to be able to load the trucks with, but not store vast amounts of oil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We'll find out. We'll be in touch. Good. Anything else on the oil tank?
They were still working at it at 6 o'clock
Really?
at night.
Lights
yeah.
up? Lights on? No.
Just on the excavator. I
Right.
think. I think they have a ways to
snow's
go.
coming. Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to get it to a certain point before the storm tomorrow.
Good. All right. Well, that's interesting. West Cornwall Firehouse, things are going ahead for plans and bids on energy work at the West Cornwall Firehouse. We did get plans there by Lisa Keskinen, the architect, who has got the floor design, and hopefully we'll meet with her in a week or so to get some changes. We're upgrading the heating system there, perhaps doing some internal reconfigurations, and we're insulating the roofs on actually the entire building. And there's a lot.
Is it the whole building?
The whole building. So that should be a huge energy savings. Thanks again to Kate Freigang and her work with the Energy Task Force, highlighting some of the energy savings there. But we should have a new heating system and a much better insulated building. So the step is to get, there's some preliminary work that has to be done, and we're trying to get bids now on redoing the electrical system and some of the carpentry work that needs to be done in order to accommodate the blown-in insulation, which Paul feels is the best way to go.
Where's the access to the...
There's actually 3 different sections. This has an access there. This has an access in over this area, And then this was actually an addition, so you have to go from here into there. This was the addition that was put on.
Right, right. You come up here and then go in through here.
Right. Yeah. So when we get a minute, we'll meet with Lisa and get some new thoughts down. But I want to keep you in the loop with that, so we'll have some bids hopefully back within the next month to get going on that.
That's just for doing the insulation part of it, you're saying?
Well, it's both. It's the insulation. It's the prep work before the installation and the installation. Then this work, as far as updating the mechanicals and the interior of the building, will be done more in spring and summer, because we got to replace the heating system and dig out the oil tank. So that would be.
What is the heat's blown? No,
It's forced air.
It's forced air
Boiler,
now,
forced air.
currently.
Yeah.
And that's what it'll be in the future, just a different boiler.
Right. It'll be propane instead of gas, instead of oil.
Right, right, right.
Converting to propane heat.
Right. Presumably a modern.
Right. More efficient setup for heat and hot water. I think this boiler is 50 years old, so it's probably, they got modern ones. Should save the town a lot of money and energy. Okay, anything else on that? Budget, we have a draft here that Barbara put together. I think most of the holes have been filled. At this point, we have the total increase. The operating budget is up about 3%. The capital budget is up about 15%. The capital items you need to add are the ones that were on the 5-year plan.
Well, that's what this is, right? Or is that
Right, that's just the stuff on the 5-year plan.
Right, right.
So the goal is to get a motion tonight, at least send this draft to the Board of Finance. They're going to meet on we have a presentation with them next week.
So,
And some of these may have to be, there may be some adjustment here on some things.
I'm looking at the debt service.
The debt service.
There's two different,
Two different debts.
well, yes, we have the CCS bond, CCS bond interest. And maybe that's both of them also, the bond and the bridge loan interest. Because the top one is the bond and the bridge loan.
I don't know why we lump. It might be easier to I might ask Barbara to break that out to bridge, CCS bond, and CCS bond interest.
She may be doing that. It may be the bond and the bond interest below it. I'm just looking at the
But there's two
numbers here.
different bonds. One's the CCS bond and one's the loan for the bridge.
Right,
So
right.
we should, and you can see that that's probably 165 of that is for the school, and probably the same amount or a little less is for the bridges. So we should see if we can break that out. I just think it would be clearer if we didn't bundle those two together.
Right.
This is two
okay.
different bonds.
Right, right, right. And it looked like, in looking through our own budget, the selectmen's budget, which is what we're talking about, that our salaries represent about a third of the budget.
Could be. I haven't totaled them up, but that could be fair.
I think it was about 700,000 out of the 2 million. I think I did that. I think it was about a third.
Salary and benefits, or just salary?
Just salary. Because the benefits are less in our control.
Right.
Actually, that's a good point. I think the benefits would add a significant amount to that. Would probably bring it to closer to 50%.
Yeah.
Which I could believe for sure. I mean, it's
Right.
I was just thinking of it in terms of how it correlates to the increase in expenses for salary and wages, how that correlates to our increase in our budget.
Okay. Yep.
You know, basically, what are we spending our money on?
Right. And on the last page, Barbara says that the 3% increase equals $22,000, and our total budget went up roughly $60,000.
So that I don't get.
Yeah. Well,
Let's see, that's-
your numbers are about right, because if you multiply
Right,
22
right.
times 33, you get up with $660,000.
Right.
So you are correct
Right.
with that. But also, most of our increases are actually not in salaries. But
Are not in salaries.
Are not in
right.
salaries,
Yeah,
so.
that was sort of the point of the exercise to
Right.
the 3% raise represents about a third of the increase.
Right.
There are some other things, and then we do have to go, that we'll eventually revisit.
We have to know that.
So would you like a motion to,
Send this draft to the Board of Finance.
I'll make a motion that we send this draft budget to the Board of Finance so we can start to finalize it.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Let's see, appointments, we still have some vacancies on some town boards, and we have gotten some interest. I'll try to get some more letters organized for our next meeting for consideration. Let's see, additions. Jim reported he's gotten a quote from Matt at Seymour Sealing for oiling 9.8 miles of road. Seymour Sealing has a state bid for this area, and that would cost $150,000. And again, this would be the MC 3000, and we'd be mostly doing roads in East Cornwall area in the spring.
Is it before April 1st or May 1st?
May 1st. So that's quite a bit less than summertime oiling. And that would keep things maintained there.
Well, and how does that, I can't remember what we spent. That's about where we want to be, or
That's where we want to be, because roughly we have $300,000. We spend half on oiling and half on asphalt.
Right.
Then I left Jim at 7 o'clock on River Road. There's a washout there, and we had a little trouble getting. We sort of got stuck in the washout, so more equipment was on the way at 7 o'clock tonight. Get that open before the storm. So just a clogged culvert. It iced up, and water went out over the road and put a big rut in the road.
In the Narrows?
Yep, of course. So anyway, that's where Jim is. Hopefully he's out by now. But anyway, working overtime. It's been that kind of winter. A lot of ice ups and stuff.
Is the road fairly icy?
Road's pretty good, but it was icy enough that when his tire went in, it was hard getting traction back out. So
Yeah.
so
I believe
it's
it.
icy enough. Next we have beavers on Cream Hill.
So what this is the first quote, or are we going to get more?
That's our Jim's happy with their work, and they've gone through the state bid process, and I think they're the lowest in the region.
Should
And
we-
we'll get more information from him.
We don't
when
need to
get out.
accept it at the moment.
We don't have to accept it, but I think that's his recommendation, and we can consider it. And get it lined up, because they have to buy the oil and get that ahead of,
Right.
head of the season, so we'll put that on. Next agenda. But that's where we want to be, and we've had good success with that company in the past. Then somewhere we have a letter from Bianca Griggs, who lives on Cream Hill Lake. Did you get a copy of this?
Yes.
Asking us to participate in a lake-wide beaver trapping at Cream Hill Lake because of anyway, she says in her letter there's environmental risk of humans because of Giardia. And we've been discussing with Dane Marino, who's a licensed trapper, tasked with removing beavers from Cream Hill Lake. Conversation with Ann Kosciuszko of Cream Hill Lake Association. She suggested I contact the neighbors in the lake to share the cost of the removal. I'm asking the town of Cornwall, the town beach, one of our neighbors, to consider sharing the cost of removal to ensure safe as possible recreational environment for the public. Danny Marino's estimated cost is $2,500. I believe he's licensed by the DEP.
When is the window for
I think
traveling?
it's now. So I'd make a motion we contribute $250 to this fund. It's an open question. I've talked to the health district about the Giardia issue, whether beavers in the water actually pose an increased risk or not. It's an somewhat open question, as there's wildlife throughout the area. Whether you can say if we trap the beavers there'll be no Giardia is probably a stretch. There's a thing called beaver fever, so it's an open question whether that all comes together. I do think from the town standpoint I'm uncomfortable having beaver dams in general in the Cream Hill Lake watershed because they fail, and we've had damage in West Cornwall due to flooding. I don't like having a lot of extra impoundment above West Cornwall. It's about 700 feet, and historically has been a flood prone area, so that'd be my motivation to make sure whatever impoundment's done up there, that it's done in a managed way as opposed to beaver dams, and they're damming up at the spillway.
The headwater of what flows into West Cornwall.
Yeah,
That's only the first beaver dam, isn't it?
there's a series. But it probably impounds the most water, or could.
Oh yeah, I'd be convinced it impounds the most water.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cream Hill Pond does.
Right. But you raise Cream Hill Pond a foot, that's 6 inches, that's a lot of water. That's why they call it Mill Brook, because there's a lot of power that goes right down through there. So I guess I'd make a motion that we join the effort at $250.
I'll second that. And that the town is a participant, they're not the...
We're not the lead agency on this.
Right.
Is the impact on the beach is less than probably some other places. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What else do we have?
Tax refund.
Tax refunds. Here it is, the Office of Tax Collector. Ooh,
That's a clip.
that's a clip. That's a big clip.
Where's that at the pond?
Ooh. Okay, so we have $11,000 in tax refunds.
Ouch.
Now, of course, these range from $11.28 to $6,000. Chase Bank and City Mortgage apparently double paid some property taxes. Nice of them, but I don't think they.
Maybe more than just.
Okay, so this is more than.
Do we have to
We
give
should-
them back the money?
Well, apparently they saw 6,000 and paid 12 or something. So anyway, there's one. The easy ones are $30 to Jane Garmy for overpayment. Roderick McNeil, $11 for a duplicate payment of his personal property tax. Yeah, I think Chase Bank and City Mortgage saw the total for the year and paid the whole year, and as they'd already paid half of it before, they want to only pay half, not whole again. So, and as this is recently collected, it's also easily given back. If they come up with this in the outgoing years, it's a little bit more complicated. So I would make a motion that we grant these 4 tax refunds totaling $11,640.43 on recommendation of the tax collector, Gene. Second?
I'll second that.
Want to see all the details?
Well, I'm just kind of always curious to see the,
Ooh, and we got more. Well, it keeps on going. It is tax payment time. I have gotten some concern calls from taxpayers that pay more than $10,000 a year in taxes to the town of Cornwall, and the state concerned about the president's or the tax refund being an actual tax increase, or their tax reform, which is supposed to be a tax break, being actual tax increase
more of them? Or is
for
that-
some
this is the big
people.
one?
Yeah, the motion is for these right now.
Those, yeah, all right, we'll stay focused on those 4. So those 4, $11,000. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think the state of Connecticut, along with New York and New Jersey, are suing somebody, or maybe in court.
Congress.
Congress, to,
Right.
just that the $10,000 limit is
Arbit-
unconstitutional or illegal or something arbitrary. I'm not
Right.
sure what their argument is.
Right. The latest thing I heard too was the governor's proposing the town set up a foundation so people can donate the amount of tax they owe over $10,000 to the town, get a charitable deduction for it instead of paying taxes. Plenty of questions on that. But anyway, that was apparently part of his speech, that the town of Cornwall or towns would set up a charitable foundation to receive gifts in the form of tax liability over $10,000, and then people get a tax deduction for that extra money.
And then
And
that
who knows?
foundation pays the taxes?
Somehow the foundation, which I hope would be somebody connected to the town of Cornwall, would then use that to pay for our general purposes.
Oh,
So anyway, details to follow on that idea.
well, that would have
Okay,
to
but
be-
back to the refunds. All right, we have another one for $44.33 from a Hyundai lease. So I'll make a motion to do that and bundle that with $1,561.22 to Salisbury Bank and Trust for duplicate payment of real estate tax. Ooh, here you go. The property owner prepaid the tax in December due to the new federal tax law. But we found that you can't double pay a bill because the bill that's due in July hasn't been generated yet.
You can't pay the July, but you could pay the January one.
The January one.
In December.
You can, but that's the second payment of a bill that's already been generated.
Right,
You
right.
can't prepay a bill that hasn't been generated yet.
Right.
So I'm sure this will be a topic that comes up and will not be easily resolved.
I wonder how many of these are discovered by Gene and how many of them are discovered by the people that are double paying.
Don't know.
And she's keeping records too.
I don't think she's not in the obligation to give back money if people overpay. Unless they tell her they overpaid. We're not in charge of, I think, but maybe she is.
Well, I don't know, that's the sort of the question.
Right.
If somebody overpaid, would
Right.
she contact them and say
Right, say you paid $20 too much. Don't know. Okay, so we're set on tax.
Did we
We
vote
vote
on
on
that?
the second batch? So I'll vote to do the second batch.
Second. I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's see, that brings us to public comments. Still have some public out there. Hello, everyone. Any comments? Comments? Questions? Okay, well, thanks for coming. Question from the press.
Yes, sir.
What? Yes.
Those beavers,
Beaver.
are you relocating them?
No, I think they're gonna be trapped.
Really trapped.
Really trapped. Made into a hat like Richard's. Maybe not. I think. Yes, I don't think they're being relocated. Although that's a good question. Ask Bianca if they're gonna be relocated or they're gonna be trapped. Trapped.
Dan Marino knows.
Yeah.
I just have a comment
Right.
regarding the West Cornwall Firehouse renovation.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention that the engineer in charge of managing the assessment of the building that we did,
Mhm.
the ASHRAE audit, is still employed by Eversource, and still has that as one of its accounts.
Okay.
Lisa wants to speak to him about any of the specifications that were indicated in that
Mhm.
audit. I sent you that name. I can
Right.
send it again if you prefer.
Okay.
Would you like that?
All right. Sure.
Should I send it to her?
To Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa who?
Lisa
The
Cassidy?
Or no, send it to me. It'll be fine. Great. All right. Yeah, Roger Kane's here. Public comments. Bridges are moving along.
Yes,
Right. 2 bridges.
right, I talked to Dave Teese today, assured him that hawk surveying is been approved for the second site, so they're going to get to work on that. Told him that we are aiming for the end of the month to have a invitation bid.
Right.
And he thought I was trying to put a little pressure on him. I said, that's exactly right. So anyhow, we're aiming for that. We'll see where we get. We're going to make progress in the right direction.
Great. So do you think we'd have something for our mid-February meeting? Because we probably would need to approve that. Or whatever. We'll find out.
When we get a little closer
Right,
to that.
okay,
So
good.
We're talking 2 weeks out.
Yep.
So in a week
Yeah.
or so, ask me again, I'll have a better answer for you.
Good.
Have the surveys been completed?
No, they definitely have not been.
Right. So,
But, They
yeah.
started the survey at the gravel bank. They wanted to get, I believe they're going to sign a retainer check tonight for the
For Smith Place? Okay.
And then they'll start that.
Right, I mean, as soon as,
Depending what the weather does right now, things are looking pretty good. We don't have a lot of depth, so we've gone out. We had a meeting last week, the surveyor, Dave Batista, and myself at both locations to determine the extent of the survey, what needs to be done, what needs to be included, what doesn't have to be done. So, we have
Oh,
a pretty
good,
understanding.
good.
Great. Okay, thank you, Roger. All right, so that's it, other than paying bills and some personnel.